Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar introducing the PITC PARS, brought to you by the Program for Infant and Toddler Care at WestEd. Presenting today are Peter Mangione, Kerry Kriener-Althen, Gabriela López, and Bianca Reyes. Thank you all very much for joining us. My name is Danny Torres. I'm Associate Director of Events and Digital Media for WestEd. I'll be your host today. And now I'd like to introduce Kerry Kriener-Althen. Kerry is our Assessment and Research Director for Early Childhood Learning and Development at WestEd. She'll be moderating the session today. And Kerry, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Danny. And happy Friday, everyone, and welcome. For those of you who joined us earlier this week, we do have some additional bonus content. So you'll get some new information today as well that from some of the feedback that we heard on Tuesday. My name is Kerry Kriener-Althen. I'm one of the co-authors of the PITC PARS. WestEd has a rich history in the early childhood space, providing responsive and supportive professional development for the field and using assessment and data in intentional ways to reflect on how we may support early childhood programs to care for young children. The PITC PARS is rooted in this deep history and was developed to support observation and reflection about quality care in infant-toddler group care settings. The PITC PARS consists of an instrument guide and 5 subscale guides, and all are provided in English, Spanish, Simplified Chinese, and Traditional Chinese. And you'll learn a little bit more about them a little bit later on. For now, I am going to turn to my co-presenter, Peter Mangione. Peter, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you with us today. I'm Peter Mangione. I am a senior fellow at WestEd, and I also am the director of the Program for Infant Toddler Care, or PITC. I'd like to start by talking about the PITC for a moment because the PARS is part of the PITC. So when we think about the PITC, it's an approach to infant toddler care that is relation-based and responsive. We look at every aspect of care through that lens of responsive relationship care in a holistic way. We always start with looking at the relationship and looking at how to be responsive, whether we're talking about the environment, caregiving routines, family, culture, inclusion, individualization of care, and responsive interactions, of course. So everything comes back to that. That's the center of what we're talking about, that responsiveness in a relationship. And so when we went to look at the PARS, we wanted to create an assessment tool and reflection tool that would capture that holistic approach to PITC, that we would look at everything through that relational, responsive lens, but look at all aspects of care. So everything we do caring for infants involves engaging with them and following their lead and supporting where they're taking their learning and development. And so when we developed the PARS, those components were front of mind. This is what the PITC is all about, and it's what the PARS is all about. So when we look at the PARS, how did we get here? Over the years, we've heard from many people, coaches, people who are involved in professional development, who've said, it's great to have the PITC, we're implementing it, but we need some way to document our progress of implementing the PITC in our programs. I, as a coach working with individual early care educators, need to have a way of looking at that progress. We also heard from people who were interested in doing evaluation, and they said we need some way of documenting implementation of PITC as part of our work. So what we've done is we started working on this tool. It was a long process of development. And first and foremost, we were interested in supporting that reflective work, looking at the aspects of PITC and embed and look and seeing how we're making progress and implementing them. Again, always thinking about that implementation holistically. what we know is this tool that we've developed can be used in evaluation. But much more importantly, and as we've interacted with the field over the years, is using this tool to look at what you're already doing well. Where have you already been successful in implementing the PITC? What is that strong foundation you already have that you can continue to build your practice? And that's the way we approach the tool. What are the strengths that you're bringing to practice, that you have in your practice, in your programs, that individual care educators have as they're providing this very important care to infants, toddlers, and their families. So that's where we come with the PARS. And so what makes this instrument unique? As you can see that we have here on this slide, the first point is that we are focused on birth to 36 months of age. That is our only focus with the PITC PARS. That is the focus of the PITC and how we approach our work. So it is an instrument with that focus. Secondly, it's an instrument that can be used in both family child care homes and in center-based settings. It doesn't separate those settings. There are places in the tool where some points are unique to setting, child center-based, and some points are unique to family child care. But what we know is that the care for infants and toddlers is care that takes place in all settings, and the common elements are much more frequent than those distinguishing features of one setting or another. Another really important point is that this tool focuses on both process, the indicators of quality, particularly responsiveness and relationships, and the quality of interactions that support learning and development in every way, whether it's language or the child's cognitive development. And also structural indicators, because those are very important. I think if you remember the first slide we showed where we were showing the aspects of care, that the PITC policies of primary care, continuity of care, small groups, individualization of care, culturally responsive care, and inclusive care, all of those structural indicators of quality are built into the PARS because we know that attending to those elements, those components of care is what makes possible, really facilitates the process indicators and that responsiveness and supporting infants, following their lead, and building your practice around what is this experience like from the infant's point of view. And then finally, as I've already mentioned, the PARS is strengths-based. We start with, what are you already doing that reflects the kinds of practices we believe very strongly in PITC will promote the development and learning of infants and toddlers and be very supportive and nurturing with their families. So that's what we've created here, a tool that first and foremost allows you to document progress, look at your strengths, reflect on them, but also a tool that can be used in other kinds of ways as well. What I'm going to do now is invite my colleague and co-developer, Gabriela López, to focus on really a core feature of the PARS, which is how we do observation and reflection. Gabby, please introduce yourself and take it away.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Hello, everyone. Gabby López. I'm a former team member at Wested and currently in a role outside of the organization, but clearly huge supporter of the work and believe very strongly in the PITC PARS as a tool that's actually going to get us to a place where we're honoring infants and toddlers, the caregivers that support infants and toddlers in all of this space. So here we go. Let's talk about observation and reflection. So when we started this work, when many moons ago, we were taking and using this instrument out in the field. And one of the things that we, as Peter mentioned, that we really appreciated about the instrument was literally that we were looking at care and observation from a really asset-based perspective. And you can imagine that for those of you who have had observations happen in your classrooms, evaluations, and all sorts of different types of feedback, that so much of the time we spend in this space looking for the we look for the absence of, or for the existence of, behaviors that are not necessarily positive. And what became really clear to us is that in taking this asset-based approach to the work, that we were going to have to redefine what we believe to be the role of an observer versus an assessor or an evaluator, and what literally were the most important values-oriented aspects of how we came to this work, and how that would show up in the space. And for us, that meant doing several things. It meant being able to help our colleagues understand that when you're in a space, you're being invited in as a guest, right? Like, you're observing care, you're looking for the positive aspects, the positive behaviors, the interactions, the cues that are happening between a caregiver, an educator, and a young child. You're looking for the ways in which just the smile, the joy that happens in care settings. And something as simple as, if you're entering a space and you're using use an example of you're using a clipboard and standing above children, standing above caregivers as you're hoping they're on the ground, on the floor engaging with children, is very intimidating. And so if we start to become more self-aware, then that helps us to shift our behaviors and shift how we show up. So that started for us this real intentional way of thinking about how we were using the instrument, and the type of guidance that I would give to somebody that I'm working with, or the type of guidance that I would give to a caregiver in this space using the instrument. And we were very intentional about deciding, okay, so let's think through, what does it mean to be self-reflective? What does it mean? What's the type of guidance that we would currently have, that we would have to give to folks, to help them understand the way in which they're showing up in their care practice, and the way that we can improve. Because at the end of the day, when we think about self-reflection, and when we have instruments and tools that define quality care, it is about how you use that information to change practice. And that was first and foremost a value for us that we knew we needed to pull through and show up in the world in that way. But there's also value in these other uses of an instrument or of a tool. And so we're, as assessment is part of understanding global quality of care in a specific place that can help allocate resources towards that care. There are different ways of using tools that where you can also land on the values that you hold. And that was really important for us as well. So we really took a very strong frame and, quite honestly, put that stake in the ground around the primary purpose of what we were designing and building in these experiences, and understanding and utilizing the PITC PARS were really about asset-based self-reflection that allowed the adults in care spaces the grace to understand, hey, I can do this. I'm doing these things really well, and I can do them better if I focus on being present more and looking for cues that young children who are nonverbal yet might be giving me that they need something or they want my attention. The instrument and the observation process is very grounded in understanding that synergy between the adults, the environment, and the children and families in those spaces is what we're ultimately searching for to be able to develop that relationship-based care. So as we think through an asset-based approach, part of the underlying sentiment belief in an asset-based approach is literally that we believe that humans are malleable, that we're all able to change, that we're all able to grow. And aligned with the PITC philosophy of really respectful and relational care, then it makes sense that throughout the instrument, the things that we're looking for the presence of positive behaviors. And we believe and know that the presence of those positive behaviors actually helps us identify high quality care. And it also helps us to understand that high quality care is dependent upon that particular group of families and children that you have at any given time. So the instrument doesn't assume that you're sort of going to get to this place of, oh, now I've met all of the indicators forever and ever, and I'm at the highest quality care that I can possibly get. That's actually not our approach. Our approach is it's a continuous cycle of improvement, because if we are engaging in delivering relationship-based care, then you are having to get to know those families, you're having to get to know those children, and adjusting your care based on the aspects of connection that you have with them and what you know is important to them, and how you're scaffolding and facilitating those experiences for young children. And this was really, really a core aspect of the training as we think about observations, as we think about self-reflection, as we think about coaching, as we think about quality rating and improvement. All of those things are couched in this very, very strong commitment to relational care, to understanding the diversity and beauty of how we show up as humans every single day, and how we design those environments and programs, both in family childcare and in center-based, to really uplift those behaviors and positive qualities of care that we want for infants and toddlers in this space. Another really important aspect of when we were developing the PITC PARS and the guidance, particularly the guidance around using the instrument, it was really important that this asset-based approach showed up all throughout the materials, all throughout the scales. And as we learn more about the instrument, as I turn it over to Bianca and Kerry, they will actually share with you more deeply about how that shows up in the instrument and the subscale guides. I will turn it over to Kerry and Bianca.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gabby. Also, before we move into this next section, I want to do a call out to one of our attendees. Amy Wagner was one of the original writers of the PITC PARS content. So welcome, Amy, and I'm sure you're happy to see the evolution of this project over its 20-year cycle. You've all met me already. I want to ask my colleague Bianca to introduce herself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bianca Reyes, and I am a co-author of the PITC PARS subscale guides, and I am also the lead trainer for our PITC PARS training sessions.
Perfect. Thank you, Bianca. And she will be here to support me in this next section, as well as answering any questions that might be coming up related to training and relating to the subscale guides. So what we're going to cover next are the resources of the PITC PARS that are that support the users of the assessment. I want to say too that it is both, and I think we haven't been quite clear yet. It is an assessment tool, and it originally started from the point of an assessment tool used for research and evaluation purposes. Since that, over time, as we have been taking the tool out there, talking with folks over time, we also decided that we wanted, and building off of the strong foundation of PITC, building off of the values that Gabby highlighted around really wanting to be strengths-based, and how can we bring something that is supportive to the field. It's an under-resourced field, as we know, and how can we bring something in that helps the folks to support the quality efforts that they're doing, but in a strengths-based way, so that they're also feeling supported around that. And in addition to that, as we've been doing training with folks in other places, one of the things that we really learned is that the first base place is to really understand about the quality indicators that are expressed in the PITC PARS. So as we finalized the materials, we framed everything from that point of view, that we start first with learning about quality indicators, and the materials and the resources are around supporting that. Then we use the materials to really support observation and reflection. And then finally, as we said, a small number of users will want to use it for research and evaluation purposes. But we didn't want to start with the rating first. We wanted to start from a place of learning, observing, documenting, reflecting. And then for those who have the need for scores and ratings and those sorts of things, it is a research-based tool that supports those uses. So let's talk a little bit more about that. PITC PARS resources, and what we're meaning specifically is we're referring to the instrument guide, the subscale guides, the training, and the website. All of them are available in English, Spanish, Simplified Chinese, and Traditional Chinese. They were all available when they all became available. They were all available in all 4 languages, and as Gabby and Peter expressed as well, that was part of our value, was to have them out in all of the languages at the same time. And as we know that many of our users are supporting family child care providers and supporting family child care providers who may primarily use those particular languages. So let's take a look then inside the instrument guide. So as we mentioned, and we've kind of alluded to, there's 1 instrument guide and there's 5 subscale guides. So as you get into the instrument guide, one of the things you'll notice is that there are 5 subscales, and they're sort of color-coded over here. And I know it's too small to read, so we did a little call-out box on one of the subscales. But the other thing I wanted to point out is that there are a total of 27 items within those 5 subscales. And one of the callouts of subscale guide 1 here, which is quality of adults' interactions with children, there are 7 items. And you can see here what those items are: responsiveness and sensitivity to children, positive tone and attentiveness, responsive engagement and intervention, respect for children's initiative and choices, and then support for cognitive development, language development, and also literacy, language and literacy communication. So that's kind of the general organization. We're going to go a little deeper dive into what does this look like. So within each of the items, there are 4 sub-items. The 4 sub-items are statements that describe specific aspects of quality. So an example here under the item responsiveness and sensitivity to children, we see the 4 sub-items, and we're not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to give you just a shorthand here. The first sub-item is the infant toddler care teacher responds promptly and appropriately to children's non-distressed cues, such as vocalizations, gestures, requests, moods, and other nonverbal and verbal cues. As building again off of what Gabby said earlier, we look at this as a strengths-based tool. And as a strengths-based tool, we are really looking at each of these sub-items in sort of a dichotomous way. Are we seeing sufficient evidence, or are we reflecting on our own practice from the point of view of the supporting documentation around that, or are we not? And it's when we're looking at this as a learning tool, we can be really generous with ourselves and say, maybe there's something for me to learn here a little bit more. Like, what does this mean? And do I respond promptly and appropriately to all of the children in my setting at the same, sort of in the same sort of space? Do I give them all that kind of an opportunity? And so when we think about the PITC PARS, each of the sub-items, and some of you might be like, oh, you had 27 items and all these sub-items, but each of the sub-items are thought of in a dichotomous way. Are they met? Are they not met? If we have to sort of stretch the evidence, then okay, they're not quite met, and that's okay. And we think about it then in an additive way. We are not looking for negative aspects of care. We have the philosophy that the absence of some of the quality indicators is as negative as we feel we need to be, and provides a building place from where we can go from there. So the instrument guide, for those who want to choose to pick up the instrument guide, what you could do with that is you could take that to really learn what are these quality indicators that fall under responsiveness and sensitivity to children. Which are the quality indicators that fall under respect for infants and toddlers' choices, for example, another sort of item. For those who want to go deeper, we also have developed 5 subscale guides. And this is also part of the reason why this has been a 20-year labor of love for us, because the instrument items themselves are intact from when Amy Wagner was working on the project 20 years ago. The instrument items are intact from that time. But over time, as we've been doing training, our own observers, as we've been training other observers, sometimes in other states, what we've learned over time is we get questions like, well, what does that mean? And what does that look like? And okay, I know what cues are, but what do you mean by cues? And what do you mean by gestures? And so we created the PITC PARS subscale guides, and this was especially one of Bianca's efforts to really help us. Bianca is a trainer and a lead anchor on other program quality assessment tools. And she has either conducted herself observations or read observation reports for literally thousands of sites. And so one of the things that Bianca brought to this work was really helping us with the consistency of our language throughout and make this as clear as possible so that when we give this to an observer, they feel like they have that deeper knowledge to help guide how they're thinking about it. And also then those materials are useful for anyone who wants to go deeper and really understand those a little bit more. So as we say here, they have keywords about how the sub-items are defined and guidance about how they may be observed. So going inside, peeking inside of a subscale guide, and we cut the pages off a little bit, but I'll show you kind of the main content. We had to cut the pages off to make this a little bit larger. So the organization here, 1 through 8, we have when you're inside a subscale guide, you'll see 2 pages that are facing each other for the most part that cover one sub-item. And there's 8 components that are called out. So first you'll see the identification of the subscale guide, the identification of the item that this sub-item resides in, the sub-item labeled, which as we said as well, it was the infant toddler care teacher responds promptly and appropriately to children's non-distress cues, such as vocalizations, gestures, requests, moods, and other verbal and nonverbal cues. That's a lot, right? That's a mouthful. So what do we mean by that? Each of these sub-items then has a statement of intent. And the statement of intent is, as the sub-item is the assessment language, we didn't want to change that, but we wanted to give you all a better understanding of what this sub-item is looking at. And so all of these statements then are something like the sub-item assesses whether the infant toddler care teacher is attentive and watching. So we try to provide a little bit more information there. The next section then is evidence gathered. So whether we're doing it for self-observation, whether we're doing it for observation by a colleague or a coach or observation by an observer, we have 3 ways across all the sub-items that evidence may be gathered. And we've checked off the one that we think would be the way that you want to gather evidence for this particular sub-item. In some cases, we check off more than one if, for example, review of program materials and interview questions or responses to questions help provide the evidence. For this particular one, this would be one through observation and self-reflection. Then we have a section on definitions. And so as you can see here, we have a definition of what do we mean by gestures? What do we mean by non-distress cues? So we've taken each of the sort of vocabulary terms here and unpacked that. The next section is we have section 7 or component 7 is guidance for observing the sub-item. And this is tailored and written specifically for each sub-item. And this is your, through the subscale guide, this would be your opportunity to get the benefit of Bianca without having to travel to be with Bianca to go out to a program. This is where, this would be the advice that Bianca would give you on your first day out in an observation together at a site, where she's saying this sub-item is, what is it about? How can I help you observe for this sub-item? What does that kind of look like? And so that's what this paragraph here, the guidance for observing the sub-item. And then finally, we ended with some examples that, and there's many more than are shown here. I think we have maybe 8 or 10 examples for this particular one, where we cover different ages of children as well. And we want to sort of show what this looks like across various ages of children. I'm going to move on. So we have as well, in addition to these resources, we have some training. And one of the questions that we received the other day that we wanted to respond to more clearly today was, how do you get started? If you're interested, if you're intrigued, how do you get started with the PITC PARS? Where do you want to go from there? And I'll share the website with you in a moment, which has a little bit more information. It has information about the tools and all of that. But where would I get started? Well, if I'm interested in really learning about the quality indicators that are covered in the PITC PARS, you can get a lot of benefit just from the instrument booklet. And the instrument booklet is a standalone. Actually, all of these resources are standalone. So you can get a lot of value starting with the instrument booklet. If you decided that you wanted more understanding about the sub-items that are in the instrument booklet, we are offering training sessions. And in fact, we have training open in all 4 languages. We have registration open now. It's capped at 20 participants per session. It's an all-day session, but it's capped at 20 participants because it's very interactive. I'm not sure how many of you have gone to an assessment training before, but we really wanted to avoid like this sub-item is about this and this one's about this. Rather, we've made it very interactive and engaging as a way to help people kind of dive deeply into the content of the instrument and to have a good starter around how to navigate using the instrument. For many people, they'll only be interested in the instrument booklet. Other people may be interested in also having the training. And those who sign up for the training will also receive a copy of the instrument booklet. So if you have an instrument booklet and then you come to the training, you'll get another copy of the instrument booklet that you can share with a friend or have in a different language if you would prefer to receive it in a different language. So then we have the subscales. Each of the subscale guides can also be purchased separately. Maybe you're not interested in all 5 subscales. Maybe you're interested in the interaction subscale, or you're interested in the family partnerships subscale. So these were designed as standalone and so that you can treat each as its own module. And each of these as well are a deeper dive into that content. And so that's where when we looked at the 2 pages for a sub-item, really diving into all of the sub-items within that subscale. And again, that training has been developed to be interactive and also capped at 20 so that it can be engaging, interactive, and really participatory. We do have that, so if you're interested in the materials, you don't even, we would recommend starting with the instrument booklet because it's a framing about how to think about using the materials overall. but there's no rule that you have to go in any particular order. But the one rule that we do have is that a prerequisite for a training on any one of these subscale guides is the instrument training. And we find that we've really designed this based on our experience about how best to sort of onboard people to the amount of content, and also in how to really think about how to use the materials. And then finally, we get the question a lot, well, what about the reliability training? When can I have inter-rater reliability training? We are not going to begin to offer the inter-rater reliability training until next year, and we'll do that by request with small groups. As those of you who've been in infant toddler settings, you know we don't want to take large groups into an infant toddler setting. And we have our trainers who would take out 1 or 2 people into an infant toddler setting towards reliability. But again, we've really learned that the whatever subscales you would want to be reliable in, it's important that you've completed this subscale guide training. And the reason why is because we've really found that you can get to a level of reliability within a week with us, but we've had people come back and say, well, wait a minute, I don't feel like I really, really understood the concepts. And so we, rather than wasting your time of having you do the certification training with us and then feeling like you go out and practice it and then have a lot of questions, we feel like we really wanted to front end a lot of that, so that when you do go out, you really feel much more confident around. And the questions that folks have when we go through this process are a lot, they're sort of the layer deeper in their understanding about the tool. Okay, and so then lastly, I just want to point out, we do have our website, and again, it is also provided in all 4 languages. When you land on the page, you land on it in English, and there's a little scroll bar here or down arrow where you can then choose and select any of the other, if you want Spanish or simplified Chinese or traditional Chinese. And we have also highlighted that the training that we have, again, the training dates, and we've offered in all 4 languages. Once this initial training fills up with the English, then we will look at offering, like when we'll offer additional dates for the other trainings. And so with that, I will stop. We'll stop sharing, and we will open up, and I will turn this back over to Danny.
Introducing the PITC PARS webinar Q&A. The following segment of this webinar recording contains the webinar Q&A from Session 1, recorded on May 14th, 2024, and Session 2, recorded on May 17th, 2024. Introducing the PITC PARS webinar Q&A from Session 1, recorded May 14th, 2024. Well, thanks for the presentation. It was really informative, and we have some questions, so this is great. The first question I wanted to put forward is, do you have to know PITC? Do you have to be trained in PITC to use the PITC PARS?
I'll start on that one. We envision different uses of the PITC PARS. So for those of you and programs and care educators, providers who have had the opportunity to participate in PITC professional development, it is a tool that you can use to deepen your practice around PITC. So it really becomes a resource to you to continue to develop your work around PITC. It also, we envision it being used by people who know something about PITC, but have not gone through formal training activities, but have gotten some of our resources and have implemented some of the PITC practices. It is one more tool available for you to continue to explore the PITC and learn about it and have a way to look at it in practice. And then finally, we see it as potentially an entry point for some folks. They might start with the PARS and start to see some of those areas, specific areas of care that we focus on that are part of this whole picture that we have. And, you know, it may be that you want more information, and we'll be happy to provide it if you get to that point.
Great, thank you. Did you, Kerry or Gabby, anything to add there? No, good. Okay, so we have another question here. around people who have attended trainings in the past, who have done formal trainings. Let's say dating back as far as 2010, for example. They're wondering how the instrument has changed, and do they need to attend more, is more training required to use the new versions?
Sure.
Kerry or
I
Gabby,
can,
do you want to
yeah,
start
I
with
can,
that?
I remember the training in Atlanta.
Oh, you saw that? Yeah.
I did. I remember the training in Atlanta. Hello. Uh, what I would say is you actually should go through the training again, simply because I think it goes deeper now. I think that the context for care is different now than it was in 2010. And it's just a good idea, I think, to sharpen understanding and sharpen our ability to talk about the work, and it's particularly for using it for reflection to help guide that reflective process anchored in what's true now. And it also leaves us, I'm a huge believer of it's lifelong learning. And so it allows us to apply what we know now about the brain, about all the things, all the science around these things, in a much sharper way, in a much more relational way.
Great. All right, so we'll go to the next question here. What does PITC PARS tell us about the role of the observer?
I can take this question. So first off, yes, we do have more information in the PITC PARS about supporting observation strategies for supporting observation, specific techniques around how to do that, how to plan for an observation, what types of information to record, strategies for recording and documenting, and then how to reflect on that information, and then how that relates back to the items and the sub-items in the PITC PARS.
Great. All right, we'll just move it along. We're getting these done. So there was one question about sort of the research base and evaluations of PITC PARS. Has it been evaluated by a third party? And what have we learned?
I'll start. In limited ways, it's been used by third parties. Pieces, I saw another question about, can you use just part of it? There have been researchers, evaluators who've used parts of the PARS, and it hasn't been used extensively, but it has been used by outside researchers. And so there's some data in the literature on that. We did a comprehensive study of the PARS psychometrics here at Wested, and we're interested in other organizations and entities taking on that kind of work as well. From our work, what we found is that the instrument is quite sturdy from a psychometric point of view. It performed the way we anticipated it would, and we're quite pleased with the results. We've got some good validity results. They're a little older, but certainly I think they stand up today. And we also have some pretty strong reliability results as well. So yes, we do have a research base. Most of it's been done by Wested, and there is some work done out in the field with parts of it, and we anticipate that will grow.
Great. So a lot of questions are coming in now, so this is fun. All right, so one question that I think is a good one is, how does PARS connect with or relate to ITER's assessment tool?
Peter, do you want to take that one as well?
I'll start it, and then Kerry, you might want to add details. So as part of our psychometric work, we actually did do assessments and programs using both the PARS and the ITERs. And we found, we anticipated that there would be correlations by subscale, and that's indeed what we found. We found where we expected to see a relationship with the ITERs, we found it. In those aspects of PITC care that are not covered by the ITERs, of course, we didn't get a strong relationship with. So in that sense, we got both convergent validity, which means that it connected with theaters, as you would expect it, and also divergent, where the PITC was covering some content. Apart from the theaters, we didn't get that strong relationship.
And what I can add as well is that with the PITC PARS, because of the focus on responsive relationship-based care, we have an entire subscale that's devoted to the interactions and the quality of the adults' interactions with children in their care. That was a really a priority for us. And so what we've done, and I think going back to our flower petal design that we have, if we think about that as our 5 subscales, and the center of that is our first subscale, which is the quality of the interactions with a quality of adults' interactions with children. And the other 4 subscales then are the petals. And what a little bit of research that we had done on our own was to take a look at the relationship, say, between one of the subscales about the organization of group care, whether there's continuity of care, whether there's primary caregiving, and these sorts of things, and how does that relate to the quality of adults' interactions. And we found that when you have the organization of the environment matches more the PITC guidelines around smaller group sizes, primary care policies, that the quality of the interactions were more supportive of children's development. And so I think that's another thing too that I think really want to highlight about the PITC PARS is how we are looking at both interactions, but then also what aspects of the program help to support the interactions and the quality of the care provided. I'm going to respond to another question I see in chat, just that's sort of related to that,
You come in.
which is about, can the subscales, do they all need to be used together? And they do not. And we have had folks who've said that they're most interested in this subscale and that subscale, depending upon their funding priorities or their policy priorities. And that's the PITC PARS is designed where each subscale can be used as a standalone. And also related to that, subscale 1 is a subscale, the quality of adults' interactions with children, is actually one that we recommend being used with each individual care teacher in a setting. And then whereas the others are more about program policies or what you observe in a classroom environment. So we've tried to build in flexibility without being confusing, but we tried to build in a lot of flexibility based upon our experiences around assessment and our experiences around the needs for the field and coaches and all of that. We wanted to remove any restrictions to the extent that we could and to really support maximum flexibility.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask that one. So the next question is around early intervention. Is PITC PARS useful for birth to 3 early intervention service providers and home visiting programs?
Peter?
So I think here, if we looked at parts of the PARS, it probably would be useful. There are aspects of the PARS which are defined for the group care context. And if you're doing early intervention within that context, I think the PARS would provide useful information and a way to look at it. The subscale on responsive interactions, the first subscale 1, the first subscale, there are pieces of that I think could be very helpful within an early intervention context, just looking at the interactions and really, and there are other tools that allow you to do that too, but it would provide information about the quality of interactions and how you might work on that within an early intervention context.
And if I can add to that, Peter, I think what I experienced with particularly with the use of subscale 1, the responsive interaction, is that because of how the questions are asked, it actually forces the coach and the caregiver to be very, very specific about the cues they're looking for and how they're paying attention, the awareness with which they're paying attention to how the child is responding to what they're doing, to the adult actions and the environment. And so I think that type of care and that type of, you have to think about it from like sort of almost that minutia, if you will, at that level of detail. Those are the things that make a difference when we're thinking about early intervention work.
Great, yeah. So we have some people asking about seeing some samples and demos. Can you provide a quick screenshot, Kerry? I think you have a screenshot that you could share with an example page, and perhaps say something about how you might want to demo, or how you, if you're providing demos for people who are interested.
Sure. So what I'm going to share here is I didn't have on hand to pull up a copy of the instrument, but I have a copy of a subskill guide page. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to sort of show you how this is laid out. So the PITC PARS is organized into subskills. We've talked about the 5 subskills and kind of relating to the flower petal of the PITC PARS logo. Then within each of those subskills are a series of items. And an item, we see here, item A, responsiveness and sensitivity to children. There are there are at least 4 items within each subscale. There are between 4 and 7 items within each subscale. I know that it's really hard to see, and I apologize. This is a 2-page view, and I'm going to just try to walk you through it. I know it's hard to show kind of everything at once. Within each item are a series of 4 sub-items. In this case, this sub-item is the infant toddler care teacher responds promptly and appropriately to children's non-distress cues such as vocalizations, gestures, requests, moods, and other nonverbal and verbal cues. Wow, that's a lot. And like Gabby said, there's a lot of language, a lot of vocabulary in there. Some folks who've been through PITC training, that would be more familiar to them. But also, we've broken apart many of these concepts into different sub-items so that we can, as Gabby said, really look for the assets and give credit around the behaviors that we're looking for in an additive sort of way. So what we've done with this is that this is the part you would see in the instrument. You would see item A, you would see sub-item 1, and then sub-item 2, sub-item 3, sub-item 4. But when you come to the subscale guide, then what you see is a statement of the intent. What do we really mean? So in more like everyday language, what is the intent of what this sub-item language is intended to get at? And then we provide some suggestions around how to gather the evidence to observe this this aspect. And there's 3 ways that we recommend gathering evidence, and it varies depending upon the particular sub-item. So through observation, through review of program materials, or through responses to focus questions of the teachers or the program. In this case, this is an observation-based sub-item. And then we have a series here. What's listed are a series of definitions. We define gestures, we define non-distress cues, we define nonverbal cues. So we go through and we define each of the various vocabulary items. And then we have a section here called Guidance for Observing the Sub-Item. The guidance for observing the sub-item is a paragraph where what I like to think of it is, if I were in the program with you and you wanted to say, like, how do I observe for this? This is me sort of taking you arm in arm and saying, this is what we're looking for. As we go over here, this is what you're looking for in this setting. This is what you're looking for to see what this sub-item might look like. And then we provide a series of examples, and we try to provide a variety of ages of infants and toddlers so that you can see the responses in those different ways. So we've put it together in this way, and this was something that we had learned over time was really helpful, is sort of this, like, what do you mean by these items and sub-items? How do I find them? How do I see them? What does this look like? And so we've laid this out. And in some cases, we have some sub-items that are more specific to family child care. And in some cases, we have some that are more specific to a center-based setting. We have some sub-items that are more specific to younger babies and some that are more specific to older toddlers. So if you think about, for example, under routines, we have some focus around diapering, but we also have some focus around toilet learning and how that is supported. And so we tried again to build in a lot of flexibility. So with this one tool, you could go into any infant toddler care setting or as any infant toddler care provider around any age of children within that age group. You could have an understanding of like what this aspect of quality may look like in that particular setting. And I want to also respond. I saw a question about how does this relate to the class? Have we done analysis and work with this with the class? Well, the PITC PARS has actually been a 20-year process to bring it to the field. We had wanted to bring it earlier, but as we started going out to the field in the Atlanta training and other trainings that we provided back in the 2010s, we learned that we needed to have our resources be a bit more robust, because there was a lot of questions back to our trainers around, what does this really look like? So we restructured our training, we restructured our approach, and that's why we really want everyone to start from that place of learning about the quality indicators, because we find that no matter what our understanding is about the quality indicators, really understanding that and the definitions of each of these and what the intention is behind each of the items and sub-items was really important for folks to be able to take the instrument and then use it in a reliable way with each other as well. So that's why we start there first. And then, so anyway, all of that work predated the class when we completed all of our analysis with the ITERs and all of the research that we had done. And then we've been taking this time over time to really develop the resources so that they can be really supportive to the field. And one of the pieces of feedback we received along the way as well was the importance of providing the materials in other languages at the same time that we released it in English. And so we also then had a focus on that. And that was really valuable to do that, because by the process of doing some of that translation, it helped us to further define and refine the language that we were using in English as well, to be more inclusive in all of those different ways.
Great, thank you. Well, it looks like we're
wanted to
almost at
just add-
times. Oh, but so Peter, did you have something to add?
I want to, so Kerry, you suggested this in your comments, but we have not done a correlational study with the class.
Correct, we have not.
And how does it overlap? There will be some areas where there's overlap. There's a focus on interactions in the class. And, the PITC PARS was built within the context of infant toddler care. So it's going to have some pieces that will be, you won't find in the class.
And one more thing I'd like to mention, and I know Danny would like to close out our session, but
Sure.
one more thing I'd like to mention, and there's a question that Susan has in the chat, or in the Q&A, which is how do we make sure it remains true to the goals of assisting reflection and strengths-based thinking? And that's a really great question. And I think that's another way that it sort of varies from other assessment tools that you would be familiar with. With the PITC PARS, as I mentioned, we have every item has 4 sub-items. Each sub-item is considered individually, and you consider it sort of in a yes/no kind of way with regard to the data, the information we've provided about how to think about that particular sub-item. So do you see evidence of that sub-item? And if you're not seeing evidence, we say, okay, that's okay. Then that can be a place for growth. And those places that you do see then can be strengths that you're building off of to help support expanding into those other areas. So the way we quote score the PITC PARS is we add up the number of sub-items where we are seeing those indicators being met. And so we don't have anything in the PITC PARS that says that we're looking for inappropriate care. Our viewpoint is that the absence of the quality indicators is sort of negative enough from our perspective. We don't need to also try to name and qualify. Either we're seeing these indicators or we don't see the indicators, and we see the indicators in an additive way. And then the additive way, as I mentioned, and what we found across the board is that for when we've taken this back to care teachers in settings, and they really felt appreciative that maybe there was one of the items that really highlighted who they were and how they expressed themselves in the care. And we've heard back from coaches and from program administrators who had struggled with how to provide feedback around other aspects of quality. But then by being able to give them this place where there was that strength, it helped to open the door for the care provider to realize that they were seen for what they presented, and it opened up that conversation more readily for them to be open to the other suggestions and ideas to expand on and have that as their foundation to grow upon.
I know that you want to close. I just want to make one last, there are questions we haven't answered here.
Yes.
And we will take those questions and we will try to get those answers out to you as well, because all of these questions are very important questions, and we really appreciate your interest in response and want to make sure you have all the information you need to know and want to know about the PARS. Thank you.
Introducing the PITC PARS webinar Q&A from session 2, recorded May 17th, 2024. Well, thanks for the session. It's really been fascinating to listen to, and it's an honor to be a part of it. It's time for our Q&A section. So we have a few questions that have come in, from our participants. And so I'd like to just start. I'd like to start with a question that I have first, and then we can move on to the others. Just quickly, do you have to know the PITC to use the PITC PARS?
And Peter, I think
Peter, would you like to
you're
answer
muted.
that? Oh,
Oh.
you're muted too.
Would you repeat it, please, Danny? I want to make sure.
Oh, do you have to know PITC to use the PITC PARS?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. We envision the use of the PITC PARS in several ways. For those who have learned about the PITC, participated in our training opportunities, professional development opportunities, it is an instrument to look at your own practice, as well as to look at your program and see what kind of progress you're making and document the progress you're making in implementing PITC. At the same time, we approach using these resources with people who've been trained in PITC as a ways to look more deeply at specific areas of care, because we've really been very careful in defining what each of these areas mean. There's also the contemplated use of people who are familiar with PITC, but haven't participated in our professional development activities. But you know something about it, and you've been working with the concepts and used other resources from the PITC. This is something for you to go deeper with the PITC with, and you can use it in that way. And then finally, we envision that for some, this will be their first experience with the PITC. It's a great entry point, and as you learn about it, if you want to learn more, we have other resources, and we would be happy to work with you and help you grow your knowledge of PITC and work on implementing some of our practices.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go into these questions here. We have a few here, and we have about 9 minutes. So I just want to make sure we get these through here. So there's one here about what the state will accept. So I'll just read it. Will the state accept this assessment for those center agencies or FCCs that receive funding, whether it's CR or CCTR, AP, or other programs who require the DRDPs?
I'll start with that question, and then we'll see if others want to add. So this is the state's requirements, I think, are maybe around the questions around the class tool, and the state at this point does not have plans to change their approach and the assessment that they're using. And we really see, the PITC PARS as something that, and I think this also relates to the question about the ITers and the class, something that really can complement the work that you are already doing, the assessments that you may already have. And the focus of the PITC PARS is really a deep dive into indicators of quality that align with the PITC, looking at responsive relationship-based care. And so it was important to us to have several items along that line that focused in that area. In addition, it was important, and I hadn't really mentioned this already, but the little flower petal logo that we have above my head here, with our flower petal logo, one of the things I want to say about the PITC PARS, our philosophy, is that we really see that this subscale 1, which is the quality of adults' interactions with children, is like the yellow circle. It's in the middle, and it's something that is affected by the environment and affected by program policies and affected by the broader environment around it. And the other subscales then are represented in the other petals around the middle. And so we really have taken sort of a really specific approach around how we think about how do we set up the environment? How do we think about not only the interactions that teachers have, but what's affecting their interactions? What things such as, if they have a policy around the size of group that children, a number of children assigned to each caregiver. And because, as you can imagine, if you're caring for 3 children rather than 4 children, then you're able to have higher quality interactions or more engaged interactions with the children, because there's a smaller number. Peter, is there anything more you want to add? I sort of jumped around a little bit there.
I think what I'd like to add, and this is related to another question that I saw in the Q&A, is that we're not, the purpose of this instrument, as we've talked about today, and as we will continue to talk about, is to focus on documenting the implementation of those aspects of care which PITC sees through a relational lens, a relational responsive lens, and focuses particularly on that implementation. So it's a resource to use and to support your wider implementation of PITC aspects of care that we that are part of our approach. We have it could complement an instrument like the class, and it could complement an instrument like the ITERs. Those are more general definitions of quality and the different aspects of quality, and have grown up in within a different frame. So and they're, as we all know, used widely throughout the country for that purpose. So as the PITC PARS is really about honing in on those aspects of care in that holistic way that we do.
Great.
Something that, if I can really quickly add to that as well, I'd say one thing that is incredibly unique about the PITC PARS, and particularly subscale 1 and the interaction, is because in that particular subscale, we're looking at an individual versus the environment in general, or versus like all of the folks in the space, all of the adults that are providing care in this care space. It's really, what I'd say is, balance out. Yes, there are all of these instruments that can give you feedback, the ITERs, the class, all of there are pros to everything. I'd look at, like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish, and what's the information that you want to understand, and subscale 1 allows you to do that in a very individual way that then allows you to sort of build out this frame of quality care in that particular setting. So I just want to make sure that we iterate that it's a very unique aspect of the PITC PARS.
Great. Let's move on to the next one. We have an attendee here, or participant, who's wondering if we've supported any states so far in embedding this framework within their quality improvement systems and quality frameworks.
It depends on what you mean by embedding, because we have worked with statewide groups around the PARS in the past, and when we had draft materials of many of the resources that Kerry showed you in the presentation today. Is it part of the quality improvement system from the Senate point of view of improvement? Yes, I would say, because many states are using the PITC as part of their quality improvement. Is it part of quality improvement rating in any state? No, it has not been used in that way. So we're certain that conversation might happen, and we're just in a wait and see mode of really understanding what states are looking for and whether it would be appropriate to use the PARS in that way.
Great. All right. So the next question we have is about ensuring fidelity and reliability. Will centers be required to be certified annually to ensure that?
Great question. Thank you, Lisa, for your question. So again, we're really anticipating that that most people will want to use the instrument to learn about it and reflect and think about it for themselves. But if you're using it in a research and evaluation purpose, yes, we absolutely encourage the completing of the integrated reliability training. And what that looks like is Bianca or one of our other trainers would either come out to your site or support arrangements for you to come to one of our sites out here to do integrated reliability training, meaning literally going out into the program together, completing ratings together, matching the ratings and looking at the level of agreement that you have. And that would be for whichever subscales you were interested in using in a research or evaluation setting. Then from there, we at this point don't anticipate that we are having requirements around recertifications. Our point of view on this is you're doing the work, you have your funding requirements, and we've done, we'll have all of these other sessions to really prepare you in understanding the content. And you can come back and recertify with us when you want to, but you're the ones that are using it in your setting. You're the ones who are, if you maybe have a new anchor or something like that, that might be a reason as to why you would want to recertify. Or if it's been several years and the anchor feels that they want to recheck. So we're not doing a national fidelity study. And it really is about supporting the use that you all have and in being able to use the tool that serves your purposes. And I'm going to turn over to Gabby briefly because I know Gabby has done some of these certification trainings in the past.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And it also aligns, I hope what you all are hearing is it aligns with this very intention around you, each of you understand your group care settings the best and your families the best. What we're providing is a set of quality indicators that when you take the time, when you spend the time in deep use with Bianca or one of the other trainers, you're going to gain a level of experience and knowledge about the items and what those items are. And how they show up in different group care settings. And that gives you a level of certainty. And then you get to make the choice of how often you want to check yourself. And it's always good to learn and improve your craft with other folks, but it isn't for our purposes and the way in which we've designed and envisioned this instrument being used in the world. That isn't the ultimate goal, isn't to keep recertifying. The ultimate goal is to have the knowledge really embedded in practice.
I want to add a point because there in a few researchers and evaluators have used the PARS or parts of the PARS in their work. And we do reliability training for that purpose. And we collaborate with the researchers or the evaluators to make sure that they've established reliability and use of the tool. It's very important to us that this assessment resource has established validity and reliability. It meets psychometric standards. We've done those analyses, and we've published about the psychometric characteristics of the instrument. So for that purpose, a research team or an evaluation team would be trained once. They would do their study and they would have what they need to go forward. So there wouldn't be recertification for them either. And I noticed there's a question in chat about, can this be used without having certification? Yes, it can be used as a reflection tool. It can be used to look at your practice. It's really a resource for you to explore more deeply what you're doing with your practice and how it relates to those indicators of quality that PITC considers to be of greatest importance.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank Kerry and all our panelists today, Kerry, Peter, Gabby, and Bianca, for a great session. And thank you to all our participants today for joining us. Once again, please do take a moment to complete our feedback survey as you're signing off. A link will appear and you can do that there. If you have any questions, please feel free to email the PITC PARS team at pitcpars@wested.org. That's their email address. And as a reminder, a recording of the webinar will be available publicly in a couple of weeks, so you can look out for my email with the link. And for those of you interested in learning more about the PITC PARS, visit the PITC PARS website at pitcpars.org. With that, thank you all very much for joining us. Be well. Have a great Friday.